Sunday, March the 9th, about 7:30 a.m. And I was going over some numbers from Friday's trading activity, and something caught my eye. Other than Bitcoin being under 85,000 again, this is kind of interesting, but I'll get to that later. Anyway, Friday, I noticed that Ford had unusually high volume activity, and it made me start to wonder, hey, what's going on in Ford? Ford is a stock that's not even $10, and on Friday closed 28 cents higher, closing at $9.88. Now, note that at the top of this most active list that I have here, let me increase this, is NVIDIA, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. It's a heavily traded stock. They have plenty of activity in their up and down their options chain, and they traded 341 million on Friday, more than 2x Ford. But NVIDIA is a $112 stock with a market cap of 2.7 trillion, and Ford is a $9.88 stock with a market cap of 39.2 billion. So even though Ford is a much older company than NVIDIA, Ford is a much smaller company than NVIDIA. Yet, on Friday, for whatever reason or reasons, Ford had a lot of activity. So I started to take a peek at the options chains across the board in Ford. And I want to jump to one that I found a little bit interesting. And let me explain why. So I jumped ahead to the April 17th expiration, which is the monthly expiration for that particular month. And why I jumped over to this page rather than the previous one is that this also has open interest. And this one caught my eye, the 1085 strike, the calls. Note that the open interest, and by the way, this open interest figure is from Thursday. So Friday's open interest should be updated by before tomorrow's market open. But this volume figure is Friday's volume activity at the 1085 strike and the calls. And note that the volume on Friday was 4x Thursday's open interest. So another thing that I wanted to see was, okay, what's going to be the delta for this 1085 strike? And I'm going to jump back to previous window here. And let's go to the 17th expiration. Let me blow this up. And we will see that the delta at the 1085 strike is roughly 23. So let's say that you have to, you're a market maker and you're hedging the activity from the 1085 strike, the April 17th expiration for Friday. Now, this has a figure of 11,000, so it's slightly different than the previous figure that we saw. But let's just say, let's go with the 11,000, and we're going to say it's roughly 4x the open interest from Friday. So let's assume, for simplicity's sake, that this is one player that came in, and they decided to buy, again, I'm just going to simplify to make the numbers easy, 10,000 calls deep out of the money that expire next month at the 1085 strike. So to hedge this on the other side, let's say one person sold it. All right, one market maker sold this, sells the 10,000 calls. It's a 22 delta. So the share equivalency, they're going to have to buy roughly 220,000 shares, the market maker, to hedge this off. Now, that's not a big deal. 220,000 shares on a day where they traded 150 million is just a drop in the bucket. However, what is kind of interesting is, let's say that the person who did buy this, did buy 10, 11,000 calls deep out of the money. Why would someone do that in a stock that's not even $10? Okay, what's the interest in this? Where does he think he's getting implied odds? Now, possibly, and this is pure conjecture on my part, this is why it's interesting to me. Let's just say that this person thinks that what's going on with the trade wars that we have, or all the disturbances pertaining to that, and tariffs, are going to get ironed out over the next few days. So a little more specifically, President Sheinbaum of Mexico decided to target our automotive industry. So they're withholding parts, components, key components in the assembly of automobiles. Now, let's say that escalates and it gets to a point where plants have to get shut down or people have to get laid off, so forth and so on. Bad news for Michigan, bad news for Ohio, bad news for Kentucky. But this guy thinks that deals will be cut, apologies will be made, all will be good. So Ford, the price of Ford stock will increase in price, which will be favorable for these calls. Now, note that the bid ask on these went out at 14.15 cents, but where were these calls trading previous to Friday's activity? Let me pop open one of these, and we will note that, let's go back a couple days from Friday. So let's look at this. So on the 6th, which was 3 days ago, Thursday, these calls were roughly 7-8 cents, and prior to that, 5-6 cents. So from earlier in the week, the mid portion of the week, to Friday, these calls doubled and tripled in price depending upon the price point you start with. Possibly interesting. Now, if we jump ahead in time and we think about where these calls might be if problems get ironed out and disaster is averted as far as tariffs and the trade war is concerned. All right, you have 10,000 of these calls. So a share equivalency of that, because one options contract is for 100 shares of stock, you have 10,000 of these calls, so that's a million shares. And let's say that the average price you paid for those million, just to make the numbers simple, keep them simple, was the average price you paid for the calls was 10 cents. So average price 10 cents on a package of 10,000 calls, that's $100,000 on a million shares. What if this goes up to, for whatever crazy reason, this goes up to $1.50, right? $1.50 on a million shares. Now you got 1.5 milli. And what did it cost you to get involved in that? $100,000. So you profit 1.4 milli on a swift move to the upside. And all it cost you was 100 grand. Kind of interesting. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen, but who knows? And by the way, as I mentioned, Ford did have a lot of activity on Friday. So there was a lot of speculation, caused a lot of hedging, caused more speculation, caused more hedging, so forth and so on. And next thing you know, Ford's at the top of the list, sandwiched in between, as far as volume for Friday, sandwiched in between Palantir, which has been heavily traded lately, and NVIDIA. Now, Ford in the same sentence as Palantir and NVIDIA. All kind of interesting to me. Anyway, we have a few hours before the futures opens, and this is already kind of interesting. Bitcoin's getting rocked. Why? What's up with Bitcoin? Last I remember on Friday, it was 90,000, a bit above 90,000. So from some point Friday, this is down 7K. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's something interesting. Maybe not. All right. Thanks for tuning in and watching. If you liked it, like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you think someone might benefit from the information, feel free to share a link to the video.